Welcome to the Van Life Roadmap, Barefoot Theory's free online course all about van life. Join me as I share everything I've learned over 4 years of living on the road, so you can take off in a van you love and never look back. Leave no trace is one of the core values of the Barefoot Theory community. In this lesson, I'm going to share the guidelines of Leave No Trace and how LNT relates to traveling in a van and why it's so important. As you head out in your van, you're going to have many opportunities to explore wild and beautiful places. If you're already an avid outdoors person or interested in exploring more outdoors, understanding these essential LNT principles is a must. The purpose of LNT is to provide guidelines that help us make responsible choices when we engage in outdoor activities. When people don't respect the land by leaving trash and toilet paper behind, for example, the public agencies that manage the land often end up implementing tighter restrictions and user fees to help compensate for the damage. The LNT principles that I'm going to cover will help preserve the land while also making sure they're open and available for others to enjoy responsibly. So let's get into the 7 principles of Leave No Trace and how to apply them to living in a van. The first principle of Leave No Trace is to plan ahead and prepare. Now, the fun part about van life is the ability to be spontaneous. So what exactly does that mean for van lifers? It means to familiarize yourself with the area you're going to be traveling through. Learn about the land, who regulates it, and if there are any sensitive environments to be aware of. You'll want to find out, is it owned by the federal government or the state, and what are the local regulations? Like, how long are you allowed to camp, and are there fire restrictions? You're also going to want to find out about the wildlife that lives there so you can properly store food and belongings. And finally, are there bathroom and trash facilities, or do you need to have a plan for your waste disposal? The easiest way to find answers to these questions is to stop at the local ranger station or visitor center or the kiosks that you'll often find at the entrance to dispersed camping areas. If these aren't around, look up the regulations online and be sure to stop and take time to read any signs that you see. The Forest Service and BLM have extensive websites with information for all of the different areas they manage. The second principle of Leave No Trace is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. Irreparable damage occurs when cars or people cross over soils and vegetations that contain entire communities of microorganisms. Land management agencies do their best to provide trails, roadways, and designated camping areas so we're able to enjoy these special environments without causing further damage. Highly durable surfaces like rock, sand, dirt, gravel, and pavement are the best places to park your van. So you're going to avoid parking near fragile surfaces that you'll trample on as you walk around your camp. You also want to be 200 feet away from water sources. This is to prevent your gray water from running off into the freshwater source, as well as to give you a healthy buffer when you're going to the bathroom at your camp. Responsibly deciding where to park for the night is based on the allowed uses for the land, sensitivity of the soil and vegetation, potential to disturb wildlife, and an honest assessment of the impact you and your group might have on the area. As van lifers, we always want to strive to leave places better than we found them. Leave No Trace principle number 3 is to dispose of waste properly, otherwise known as pack it in, pack it out. This applies to all outdoor activities, whether you're camping or hiking or living in a van. Whatever comes with you needs to leave with you, and the goal here is to leave the area as good or better than you found it, as I mentioned. So that means packing out all your food scraps, including banana peels, apple cores, and pistachio shells. Even though these will biodegrade eventually, this can take a really long time and it adversely impacts the next person's experience, and it also habituates wildlife to eating human food. When it comes to peeing outside, this doesn't adversely affect the vegetation, but the salt content can attract some animals. So for this reason, it's recommended to pee on rocks, pine needles, and gravel whenever possible, as opposed to living plants. Properly disposing of human solid waste, or as number 2, as you might call it, is super important to prevent pollution of the land and waterways. Plus, no one wants to stumble on someone else's poop or used toilet paper when they're taking a morning walk through camp. I can't tell you how many campsites and trails I've been to where I found used toilet paper littered about or left behind a bush where someone relieved themselves, and frankly, it's very gross. We as van lifers who live on public lands need to do better. So if there's a bathroom facility, use it. If you have your own toilet, use it. Otherwise, you want to go at least 200 feet away from any water sources, trails, and camp, and dig a cat hole that's 6 to 8 inches deep, at least. You'll want to carry a small shovel or trowel with you in your van if you don't have your own bathroom to make digging a hole easy. Ideally, fertile rich soil is the best so bacteria can break down the waste. You're going to dig the cat hole, do your business, cover it back up with soil, and then pack out your used toilet paper. With your van right there, it's as simple as tossing your used toilet paper in your garbage can, followed by washing your hands in the sink. No big deal. Most of the time, burying your human waste in a 6 to 8 inch deep cat hole will adequately meet L&T criteria. But it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the regulations of a place you're in. Some areas in sensitive habitats have specific protocols, like the desert, that it might ask you to carry out your human waste. I've published a blog post for those of you who might be new to pooping outside, and I'll link to that in the resources section below. The fourth leave no trace principle is to leave what you find. This one is pretty simple. Admire and appreciate the things that you see, but leave them how you found them unless it's trash. Then you want to pack it out. Otherwise, take a photo if you'd like to remember it, but then carry on. It's actually easier to do this once you're living in a van because space is so limited, so you don't have a lot of room for all the cool rocks or shells that you might find. The next leave no trace principle that is especially important for van lifers is to minimize your campfire impacts. You'll probably find that you don't have campfires nearly as often as you might when you're tent camping, but it's still a nice thing to do once in a while. If there's a designated fire pit or fire ring, use it as long as there isn't a fire restriction in place. Keep the fire small and gather wood from already dead and down trees, or bring your own locally purchased firewood. Be mindful of the wind and always drench the fire before you go to bed. If you find trash in the fire pit, it's also nice to remove it so the next camper will arrive to a clean spot. If there isn't a fire pit, then don't build a new one and just skip the fire for that evening. Fires scour the ground, and we don't want to be leaving new marks at the campsites that we're staying at. Principle number 6 is to respect wildlife. One of the exciting parts of camping and traveling to wild places in your van is the potential to encounter wildlife in their natural habitat. If you do, remain quiet and give them a lot of space to carry on their way while you observe from afar. Properly storing your food, trash, and scented products will help keep animals safe and away from your camp, as well as parking more than 200 feet away from a water source. We've talked about the benefits of doing this for pollution reasons, but it's also good practice so that animals feel they have plenty of space to access their water source. If you got pets as co-pilots, keep them nearby and make sure they don't interact with or bother the local animals. The final principle of leave no trace is to be considerate of others. As more people are doing van life and calling public lands their home, it's critical that we are mindful of our impact and treat other nearby campers with respect. We might have different camping styles, vehicles, and interests, but at the end of the day, we're all out there to enjoy ourselves and enjoy nature. A lot of people like solitude, so whenever possible, offer enough space to neighboring campers so everyone can enjoy themselves. If you follow me online, you may know that I love good music, and I'm sure you do too. But your neighbors might not like the same music as you. Sound travels far, so be considerate of when and how loud you play your music, and make sure your neighbors can't hear it, especially after the sun goes down. Like I said, everyone does things a little differently, but a little consideration goes a long way when you're camping. My rule of thumb is that me having a good time shouldn't affect your ability to have a good time, within reason, of course. It's a friendly practice to consider how your actions might be impacting another person's experience. These L&T principles are here to serve as general guidelines to ensure that we minimize our impact and preserve the land for others to enjoy after us. If you ever find yourself questioning what to do, just ask yourself, would this adversely impact the environment, the creatures that live here, or other fellow visitors? And how can my actions help protect this place for future generations of explorers? Well, we covered the basics here today that you need to know as a new van lifer. I encourage you to dive a bit deeper on the Leave No Trace website and social channels.